Another edition of iWorshipSphere again, and we want to say thank you to everyone who is watching right now.
Thank you, everyone out there.
Yes, thank you. Last week, we talked about understanding worship. We looked at how Jesus had to open the mind of the disciples so that they could receive the scriptures and understand it. And Jesus is doing the same thing for us even today. So we cannot overemphasize the importance of understanding what we do in the place of worship. And today, we are going to be looking at misconceptions of worship. You know, there are some things we have come to believe in the church. Some things we believe are worship. You know, some things we believe should be done as worship, and other things cannot be worship. So today we're going to be looking at all these things. You know, those misconceptions that have governed some of our churches and some of us as individuals.
And most of these traditions and mindset we'll be talking about are things that have stopped us, that have stopped believers over the years from experiencing the fullness of a worship life.
You know, and one of these very popular misconceptions is the fact that worship is defined as the tempo of the song. So we get into church and we have this praise and worship session, and when it's praise, everybody gets jumpy, you know. And then when it's worship, we just get all weepy, lift our hands.
The slow tempo songs.
You know, but that is a misconception, because really everything we do is worship. The offering you give in church is worship to God. The message that comes forth from the pastor is actually worship.
A lot of time we see people in church gisting during the message, or reading newspaper, or toying around with their phones during the message. Is an act of disrespect to God.
Yes.
And it doesn't speak well for us as worshippers.
So get that out of your mind. Worship is not just the slow tempo of your song. Like we have always said on this platform, worship is a way of life.
Yeah, and well, I think I have a little confession to make. As a musician personally, back in those days, I always see worship as a response to music. I have this mindset that the music determines how I respond. If it's a good music, then I respond well. But with time, we discover that worship is not in music. Music is not what determines whether I worship or not. Once there's a yearning in my heart to appreciate the things that God has done, whether the music is good or not,
just go on and worship.
I still worship.
And we see that every time. Most of us are guilty.
So we wait for music to worship
before we worship.
But whereas
God,
worship begins before the music. So when you get to church, it's just another avenue to express the fullness of worship that has been flowing in your heart before that moment.
So the next time you get into church and it looks like the music isn't so good, it's okay. Just worship God. Just worship Him, because He deserves it, music or no music. And another popular misconception is the fact that worship is limited to church.
That's so true. A lot of believers, we have this mindset that till we get to church before we can worship. We refer to worship as the activities that we do in church only. No, worship should not be limited to church. Worship is a lifestyle. There's the life that we live outside the four walls of the church that define us as believers, as worshippers. So we must be truthful to the life we profess in church and to the life we profess outside. It must be the same. We must convey the same truth. So if you come to church and you behave well, you must ensure that that truth is dissenting out there. When you are out there, also let them maintain that life. So that's what we call truthfulness in worship. So don't limit your worship to church only.
Yes. And really, for the music ministers who are out there, sometimes there's just this thin line between being a performer and being a true worship leader. Because many times the spotlight is on you, and if you don't know how to direct it to God, you're just going to be leading the people to yourself instead of leading them to Jesus Christ, whom they have come to worship. So there are many worship leaders out there who think worship is a performance. It's an avenue to show how much I can sing. I'm going to show these people how much I can ad-lib. I'm going to tear this place apart. No, it's not about you.
Yeah, there must be a distinction between the worship leader and the so-called celebrities, the music artists we have in the secular world.
Yes.
I mean, if we carry ourselves the way they do, then how can we differentiate? How can we say this is worship and this is not worship? And our life is supposed to judge what is not worship. Not until we speak with our mouth. When you live right, you judge those who are not living right by just living right.
Yes. So we must be conscious. If you're a worship leader in church, every time you stand before the people, do a conscious assessment and remind yourself, Angela, this is not about you. This is about God. And ensure that you're leading those people to God. Ensure that they are seeing Jesus.
And that's why it's very important for every worshiper to understand their place in the presence of God. You must be able to find yourself. You must be able to lead yourself into that presence before you can lead the congregation into that presence. Because as a worshiper, is about creating an atmosphere, an intercession between God and the people, so that there can be a communion. And you can't do so if you don't get acquaintance with the Father.
Yes. And for those of us who are not worship leaders, who sit in the congregation while the worship leader is leading us into the presence of God, sometimes we sit down as spectators and we're just looking like, she's a bit single, but no, it shouldn't be that way. Whether you've been called to the music ministry or not, you are a worshiper.
Yeah, you need to participate in worship.
That worship. And even in the midst of 50,000 people, God can actually hear your voice.
Yeah,
He can hear you distinctively.
That's profound.
God can hear you.
And that's the main reason why you need to open your mouth in the place of worship and give your own portion of worship completely to God. So don't rely on the congregational worship. Don't say, the musicians are already doing the worship, so let me just see that. The worship leader, they are already. Let me just. No. God wants to hear the fruit of your lips.
Yes, and He deserves it. He deserves it. There's a lot more misconception out there that we are going to be dealing with this season on iWorshipSphere. We will continue this discussion on our next edition.
And it doesn't stop here. If you're a worship leader, a worshiper out there, we would like to know what are the misconceptions you grew up with as a young believer. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to read from you. You can drop your comments on all of our social media platforms. And someone out there might be blessed by that comment. We are all living in the body of Christ. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here. We're so excited that we're on this journey with you. God